Hello and welcome. This is Yon Cheku with NSM TV, bringing you the latest news. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel announced that FBI experts will visit the country to assist in a joint investigation with Cuban authorities. He stated that cooperation with the United States is proceeding through diplomatic and consular channels. Diaz-Canel also spoke about the potential release of some prisoners, calling it part of the humanitarian principles of the revolution. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel revealed that FBI experts are expected to visit Havana to participate in investigations related to a recent incident involving Cuban American citizens. At a press conference with government officials, Diaz-Canel said U.S. authorities have been informed of the case and have expressed willingness to cooperate in fully clarifying the incident. The incident involved an armed confrontation at sea on February 25, 2026, near Cuba's northern coast, close to the Cay of Falcones area in Villa Clara province. According to Cuban authorities, a Florida-registered boat carrying 10 armed individuals, mostly Cubans living in the United States, entered Cuban territorial waters. When Cuban border guards approached for identification, gunfire was opened from the boat, injuring the patrol ship's commander. Cuban forces returned fire, resulting in 4 deaths, while 6 others were injured and detained. The president stated that communication between the two countries has taken place through diplomatic and consular channels, and that a team of FBI experts will travel to Cuba to assist in the investigation. German Economy Minister Katharina Reich expressed concern that the U.S. 30-day exemption for purchasing Russian oil products could increase financing for Russia's war. She warned that attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz are heightening uncertainty in global energy markets. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency has decided to release a record amount of oil reserves to stabilize prices. German Economy Minister Katharina Reich voiced concerns about the United States' decision to grant a 30-day exemption following the purchase of Russian oil products. At a press conference in Berlin, she said domestic political pressure in the United States appears very high, noting the risk that the decision could contribute to filling Russian President Vladimir Putin's war chest. Reich emphasized that the international situation is complex, mentioning rising tensions in Asia, particularly in South Korea and Japan. She added that Germany has not been directly affected by physical energy shortages so far, but warned that global markets remain unstable. The minister also noted that the International Energy Agency's coordinated release of strategic oil reserves has not had the desired effect. According to her, the main reason is the ongoing attacks on ships in the Strait of Hormuz, creating significant uncertainty for oil transport along one of the world's most critical energy routes. The Russian Foreign Ministry accused the United States and Israel of attempting to provoke regime change in Iran and sabotage the normalization of its relations with Arab countries. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova warned that the escalation could spread throughout the Middle East. Moscow called for an immediate cessation of all hostilities and protection of civilians. Russia has accused the United States and Israel of attempting to change the regime in Iran and sabotage efforts to normalize Tehran's relations with Arab countries. In a public statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry, spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said Moscow is deeply concerned about the spread of military clashes throughout the Middle East as a result of U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. She claimed that Washington and Tel Aviv are using the most unscrupulous methods, including eliminating the leadership of a sovereign state, to achieve regime change in Iran. Zakharova also stated that these actions aim to undermine the process of rapprochement between Iran and Arab countries in the region. Moscow called for an immediate halt to fighting and urgent measures to ensure the safety of civilians and civilian infrastructure in all countries of the region. Russia urged all parties to refrain from using force and return to political and diplomatic solutions, respecting the legitimate security interests of regional nations. U.S. President Donald Trump stated that he believes Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is injured but possibly still alive. Reports indicate he was wounded in the early days of U.S. and Israeli bombings against Iran. His absence from public appearances since assuming office has raised questions about his health. U.S. President Donald Trump said he believed Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is wounded but likely still alive. Trump indicated that, according to his assessments, Khamenei may be injured but is probably still alive. The new Iranian leader reportedly sustained injuries during the early days of bombings carried out by the United States and Israel on targets in Iran. Since his appointment, Khamenei has not appeared publicly, prompting speculation and questions about his health. On Thursday, a message allegedly from him was broadcast by Iranian state media, but he did not appear in person. The message was read by a TV presenter, further fueling doubts about his public absence. A source familiar with the situation, cited by CNN, said Khamenei suffered a leg fracture and other minor injuries on the first day of the bombings. Earlier, in a press conference, Trump expressed disappointment at Khamenei's appointment as Iran's supreme leader, saying it could perpetuate ongoing problems for the country. 6 U.S. Air Force personnel died when a Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker crashed in Iraq during a mission supporting operations against Iran. According to U.S. Central Command, the accident occurred in flight and was not the result of enemy fire. U.S. military authorities have launched an investigation to determine the cause of the crash. 6 U.S. service members have died after a U.S. Air Force tanker aircraft crashed in Iraq during a mission supporting military operations against Iran. The Boeing KC-135 Stratotanker went down on Thursday in western Iraqi airspace while flying in a designated safe zone. According to U.S. Central Command, the accident appears to have occurred in the air, possibly due to a collision with another aircraft. The other aircraft reportedly landed safely. Initial reports listed 4 fatalities, while 2 additional crew members were initially considered missing. Later, it was confirmed that all 6 personnel on board were killed. U.S. Joint Chief of Staff Chairman Dan Kane stated the crash occurred during a combat mission, but emphasized it was not caused by enemy or friendly fire. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth described the incident as tragic, highlighting that warfare often brings unpredictable and dangerous situations. He called the crew members American heroes, performing their duties on a critical military mission. U.S. authorities have launched a full investigation into the circumstances of the crash, and the victims' identities will be released after family notifications. Antonio Guterres arrived in Beirut for a visit in solidarity with the Lebanese people. He called for Hezbollah and Israel to sign a ceasefire to halt the fighting and ensure Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The UN Secretary General stressed that now is a time for strong states, not armed groups. U.S. Secretary General Antonio Guterres arrived in Beirut for a visit showing solidarity with the people of Lebanon. Guterres held a brief press conference calling on Hezbollah and Israel to negotiate a ceasefire to stop the fighting and create conditions for an independent Lebanon, with sovereignty and territorial integrity respected. Quote, "Lebanon has been drawn into a war its people would not want," unquote, Guterres said, adding that he hopes his next visit will be to a peaceful Lebanon. He emphasized that this is a moment for strong states, not armed groups, highlighting the importance of a calm and diplomatic solution for the region. France and Italy have begun discussions with Iran to negotiate an agreement allowing safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The effort aims to resume oil and gas shipments from the Gulf region without escalating conflict following Iranian attacks on tankers. There is no guarantee Iran will negotiate, while new Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei vowed to keep the strait blocked. European countries led by France and Italy have begun talks with Iran to negotiate an agreement that would guarantee the safe passage of their ships through the Strait of Hormuz. This strait is a strategic global trade point, carrying about 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas. Ship transit has been significantly reduced after Iranian attacks on tankers and Khamenei's pledge to keep the strait closed. According to Financial Times sources, the initial discussions aim to resume energy exports from the Gulf region without escalating conflict. shipping companies are considering escort options by Western naval forces. Officials warn there is no guarantee the talks will advance, as Iran appears to be using the situation to pressure Donald Trump and raise oil and gas prices. The new Iranian Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, reiterated he will keep the strait blocked, making this key trade route sensitive for global commerce. A shooting at Old Dominion University in Virginia by a veteran and ISIS supporter left 1 dead and 2 injured before being neutralized by students. Hours later, a vehicle ramming and explosive attack on Temple, Israel in Michigan caused fires and injured dozens. The attacks come after a series of violent and terrorist acts in the U.S., raising security concerns in American communities. A violent day struck American communities with 2 terrorist attacks over 700 miles apart. First, at Old Dominion University in Virginia, a veteran and ISIS supporter opened fire in an ROTC class, killing 1 and injuring 2. Students managed to neutralize and kill the shooter, and the FBI is investigating the incident as a terrorist act. Hours later, a deliberate vehicle and explosive attack targeted Temple, Israel in West Bloomfield Township, Michigan. The vehicle hit the synagogue and started a fire, leaving at least 30 injured, most from smoke inhalation. The attacker, a U.S. citizen of Lebanese origin, died in the incident. Authorities said the attack was aimed at the Jewish community and is being investigated as an intentional act of violence. These attacks follow a wave of similar violence in the U.S., including a shooting in Austin, Texas, where a masked assailant with Iranian symbols killed 3 and injured many others, and attempted bombings in New York City. Authorities are investigating whether some attacks were inspired by international conflicts and U.S.-Israeli actions against Iran. Both incidents have left American communities shaken and with a sense of insecurity, highlighting security challenges in areas usually considered safe. Authorities are working to investigate the events and ensure community protection in the future. Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti said he will invite opposition party leaders to meetings regarding the election of a new president after the March 5th vote failed. Kurti stressed that the country does not need new elections and that the aim is to reach institutional consensus with the opposition. The Constitutional Court has suspended any decision on new elections or continuation of the presidential election session until March 31st. Kosovo Prime Minister Albin Kurti said he will invite opposition party leaders to meetings regarding the election of the country's new president. This follows the parliament's failure on March 5th, when the opposition left the chamber and no successor to President Vjosa Osmani was elected. The matter is now before the Constitutional Court, which has suspended any decision to call new elections or continue the presidential session until March 31st. Kurti emphasized that Kosovo does not need new elections, and the priority is to reach an agreement with the opposition for institutional stability. He added that the government is fully committed to consensus, and citizens expect stability, not repeated elections. President Osmani was not nominated by any party due to insufficient support for a new term. The presidential election process remains complex, requiring 80 parliamentary votes for the session, and parties must reach an agreement for quorum. Prime Minister Edi Rama stated that the parliament vote on immunity of MP Belinda Baluku does not represent any obstacle to Albania's path to European Union membership. He emphasized that SPAC's request did not meet the minimum condition, and there is no doubt the matter is unrelated to corruption. Rama encouraged the prosecution to continue investigations independently without political interference. Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama assured at a press conference that the parliamentary decision regarding MP Belinda Baluku's immunity does not block Albania's path to full EU membership. Rama explained that SPAC's request did not meet the minimum conditions to be considered, and attempts to link the decision to obstacles to judicial reform or the integration process are mistaken. He emphasized that this is an ongoing investigation, not a corruption case, as the prosecution has not filed such charges. The Prime Minister encouraged the prosecution to continue investigations independently, focusing on all potential avenues of corruption, and stressed the government's commitment to judicial independence and anti-corruption efforts. He added that there is no doubt about the government's determination to advance the EU integration process and ensure institutional stability. This is all we have prepared for you today. Thank you for joining us.